How could someone be looked down upon so much that they become mere entertainment at a wealthy gathering? Janelle was just an ordinary black waitress. At least that's what they thought. When Chandler Hargrave sent her an elegant invitation to the $1 Million Gala, he had no intention of honoring her. It was a velvet-wrapped trap. They expected her to arrive, feel out of place, and then leave in disgrace. But what nobody foresaw was that Janelle would step in like a diva. And tonight, she would be the one to bring their empire crashing down piece by piece.
Welcome to 30 Millionaire Stories, where success meets solitude, and every story heals a hidden wound. Subscribe and discover the heart behind the fortune.
How can a man turn contempt into a velvet-wrapped gift? Chandler Hargrave, with all the polished sheen of power and arrogance refined by money, had just discovered that answer swirling in a glass of cognac held tenderly in his hand. Leaning back into the Italian leather chair in Miami's most expensive penthouse, he and his circle of businessman friends erupted in laughter around the marble table. They were all too familiar with soiree, where reputation was the sole currency, and people's worth was measured by the length of the guest list. But this time, Chandler wanted something different, a shock, a moment so audacious that it would leave his peers in awe. And in the stillness of the night, where the roar of the ocean was muffled by bulletproof glass, he declared, "I'll invite that little waitress from the bar to the party. I'll enclose a check, and I bet she won't last 20 minutes before she bolts." No one asked why. No one objected. In their world, the crueler the joke, the more exhilarating, especially when the victim was powerless to fight back. The woman's name? Janelle Robinson. A name nobody knew. A face they had probably glanced past as they ordered their midnight martini without bothering to meet the server's eyes. She worked the evening shift at a Latin bar on the edge of Brickell, wearing a gray apron and shoes whose heels she glued back together every week. She lived quietly, unremarkably, without a voice. But what they didn't know was that behind that humble exterior, Janelle remembered every single detail they never bothered to notice. 2 days later, a tall delivery man walked into the bar and set an ivory envelope, embossed with the Hargrave crest, on the counter. The invitation inside was crafted like a jewel, weighty, ornate, and cold. Dress code, black tie formal. Venue, Sky Garden, 70th floor of the Hargrave Tower. Time, 8 p.m. next Saturday. No introduction, no signature, only a single attached check, $10,000, like a crimson lipstick stain on crystal. Beautiful but calculated, leaving a mark without explanation. Janelle picked it up between two fingers, the light glinting off the paper's surface. She wasn't surprised. Strangely, in that moment, her heart felt neither moved nor angry, but an eerie calm. As if, on some level, she had always known this day would come. The day when they didn't just ignore her presence, but wanted to turn it into a tool for their own amusement. She could have brushed it off. She could have torn up the invitation, sent back the money, and carried on with her work as if nothing had happened. But not this time. Not because of the money, not because of wounded pride, but because of the irony in the way they pretended to grant her the privilege of appearance, while they never once imagined she had the right to exist as a human being. And that, for Janelle, was a challenge. That night, she sat alone in her tiny apartment, the street light streaming through the window reminding her of the invisible boundaries she'd been taught to obey her whole life. But for the first time, she felt an urge to step beyond them, not to rebel, but to remind herself, I am not a supporting character in someone else's party. I am the one rewriting the script. Wait a moment, I have a small favor to ask you. Please hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy inspiring stories, and don't forget to leave a comment letting me know, where are you watching from and what time is it where you are right now? I always love seeing people from all over the world come together to share one meaningful moment. Saturday night arrived sooner than Janelle had anticipated. 3 days had passed since she received that calculated invitation, and not for a single moment had her mind found peace. Yet she did not waver. She had spent her entire life in silence. This time, she would let her presence speak. When she stepped out of the car before the Hargrave Tower, the first glances skimmed over her as usual. But only seconds later, the air at the entrance seemed to choke to stillness. She did not carry the look of someone entering a place where she didn't belong. On the contrary, it was the venue itself that had to rearrange its reality to accommodate her. The ruby-red satin gown clung to her as though born for this very moment. It did not glitter, nor did it feature a plunging cut, but every contour was enough to declare she did not need to try for attention. The quiet confidence in her stride created an irresistible magnetism. She looked at no one, sought no one. She simply walked, back straight, chin slightly raised, eyes fixed ahead, as though she were the one person truly invited, while everyone else remained guests. The doors swung open. Inside, the lively gala instantly fell silent, as if someone had just muted the room. A few stopped mid-sentence. Others lowered their glasses before taking a sip. This silence needed no introduction. It spoke more loudly than any announcement. A woman near the door whispered, "Who invited this diva?" The question drifted through the air, unanswered by anyone brave enough to own it. All eyes were on her, yet no one dared voice the first thought. Who was she? No one recognized the girl who once wiped tables at the bars they frequented after work. No one imagined that a waitress could enter as though born to inhabit such spaces. She strode straight through the room without a backward glance. No need to read the room's expectations, no room for hesitation. She was not a timid guest, she was the perfect disruption of everything they expected. And that made her the focal point, impossible for anyone in the room to ignore. Across from her, Chandler stood beside a cluster of dignitaries, glass in hand, but his gaze never left her. In that instant, he realized the worst wasn't that she'd come, but the way she came. He thought she would shrink, falter, feel out of place like a blunder in the evening script. But she did not. She arrived as if the entire party had been orchestrated in her honor. Her glance met his for a fleeting moment. No hostility, no reproach, only a calm look. The look of someone who saw the game clearly and still chose to walk in, refusing to be swallowed up, but determined to face the architect of it. Chandler swallowed hard, his smile twisted for an instant before he hastily composed himself. But he alone knew that his plan had begun to derail, and there was nothing he could do but watch. The room still hadn't caught its breath since the moment Janelle crossed the marble threshold. There was something about the way she existed here, quiet yet absolutely impossible to ignore, that made every practiced smile and every raised glass feel strangely out of place. At last, Chandler detached himself from the crowd. He did not hurry, but inside, every small muscle tightened with a sensation of losing control he'd never before experienced. Masking it with the confident smile he'd honed through thousands of soirees, he strode toward Janelle as if he still held the reins. He stopped a few paces from her, not too close to feign intimacy, but close enough to assert that this was still his spectacle. And she, as originally intended, remained the star at center stage. She did not look away, nor did she wait for him to speak first. Instead, she tilted her head, letting her eyes meet his as though piercing through the veneer of politeness to the true motive beneath. "Thank you for the invitation," she said, her voice even and soft, yet not a sound in the room dared to overtake it. Though not everyone wants to go somewhere, only to be made a laughingstock. It was no accusation, no reproach, just a statement so precise it seemed to strip all remaining noise from the room. Silence stretched on, as if each guest wondered whether to stand their ground or slip away to avoid entangling themselves in something they didn't fully understand. And Chandler? He stood there, his smile beginning to stiffen. In that moment, the man who once believed he scripted every narrative felt more like a character being puppeteered at his own party. Janelle did not back down. She did not raise her voice. But when she spoke again, each word cut the air into distinct layers. I did not come for apologies. I came to restore the truth. Her sentence was brief, yet it resonated like a line drawn sharply between two worlds. No one dared laugh, no one dared crack a joke. Those who had rallied behind Chandler now stood motionless, as if extricating themselves from a game whose rules had suddenly been rewritten. Chandler tried to keep his composure, but his eyes betrayed him. There was something in the way she spoke, neither pleading nor angry, that made him realize he was facing something far greater than mere humiliation. It was a declaration, and it came from the person he had once expected to bow her head. Janelle remained perfectly still, offering no further words. The silence she left behind was enough for everyone present to understand that this gala would not proceed as usual. No performance could salvage the carefully crafted play Chandler had directed. She did not break the evening's structure. She simply stood there, and by her mere presence, brought it crashing down from within. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water, and then stay tuned for the rest of this unexpected story. Comment 1 if you're enjoying it so we know you're still here. When she stepped onto the raised platform at the far end of the room, no one called her name, no one introduced her, no one invited her, yet every step Janelle took carried a different kind of weight, as if she weren't merely moving forward, but dragging an entire chapter of history behind her, one this crowd had deliberately forgotten or never imagined facing. She stood there without looking at anyone, back straight, hands clasped calmly before her as though this were a private meeting, not a high society gala where every gesture is scrutinized. There was no preamble, no beating around the bush. Janelle reached into her dress pocket and pressed a small concealed remote. The giant screen at the end of the room flickered to life. A brief video appeared. No soundtrack, no elaborate cuts. The footage showed Chandler Hargrave, crisp and clear, seated in a private study, speaking with a man off camera. Chandler's tone was light, almost unguarded, but his words left no room for misunderstanding. I know he changed the will. I've seen the original. Half the estate left for his out-of-wedlock daughter. Ridiculous. We won't let that happen, right? The audience froze mid-toast. Glasses hovered in midair, but no one dared sip. A few pairs of eyes turned toward Chandler, who still stood by the central banquet table, his face drawn tight, spine rigid, but no words came. Janelle waited until the video ended before she spoke, her voice neither loud nor soft, yet clear enough that no one needed to strain to hear. My father loved a black woman, an interior designer who helped him rebuild his first resort in Key Largo. That woman was my mother, and I am his daughter. No one laughed, no one sighed, only oppressive silence as every mask began to crack. She placed a stack of documents, sealed with official stamps, on the small table beside the platform. DNA evidence, the notarized will, an audio recording from Walter Hargrave's personal assistant, confirming he changed his heir 6 months before his death, when he was fully coherent and of sound mind. She needed no further justification. Each paper spoke for itself. Chandler did not step forward to refute, nor did he climb the stage as he once would to reclaim control. He remained frozen. His shadow stretched longer than his form, not because of the light, but because of the weight of truth bearing down on a man accustomed only to controlling outcomes. In his mind raced hundreds of possible reactions: denial, blame shifting, feigned ignorance. Yet every option shattered when he met the crowd's gaze. Not the familiar looks of wealthy friends, but suspicion seeping into each face like cracks spreading across glass. Janelle showed no triumph. No trace of victory graced her features. Only a profound calm, the serenity of someone who no longer needed anyone's permission to exist. Not because she sought recognition, but because at last she could no longer be ignored. The atmosphere in the room thickened the moment Janelle laid the evidence on the table. This wasn't polite silence anymore. It was rigid tension. No one lifted a glass, No one changed the subject. All eyes turned toward the same person, Chandler Hargrave. He stood motionless, but his face had shifted. Gone was the cold confidence of a man who believed money could control every narrative. In its place was a subtle panic, hidden behind a mask that was beginning to crack. Then, as if the air itself waited for permission to shatter, 3 people stepped onto the platform beside Janelle. There was no applause, no lengthy introductions. They didn't need names, their forthcoming words would speak for them. First was Morris Langford, the lawyer who had worked with the Hargrave family for over 2 decades. He was the one who notarized Walter Hargrave's original will, the version that named Janelle Robinson with full legal inheritance rights. His voice trembled, not from age, but because he was dismantling a web he'd once helped weave. He recounted how he'd been coerced into relinquishing that role, replaced by a law firm handpicked by Chandler, with the sole purpose of erasing all proof of an unwanted heir. Next came Clara Esteban, former senior administrative assistant at Hargrave Enterprises. She stood tall, hair pinned back, eyes resolute, clutching a stack of files she had never let go of for 10 years. She produced internal documents, deleted emails, falsified appointment records, and Chandler's directives to legitimize a substitute heir, a fabricated persona meant to occupy the position Janelle was born to fill. Finally, Victor Daines, an investigative financial journalist in Florida, laid out bank statements and unusual transactions from Hargrave Enterprises to local government funds, amounts that matched no disclosed investment. He revealed conditional donations, covert deals routed through shell companies, and anonymous testimonies from 2 former officials confirming that Chandler used the corporate name to secure policy favors and conceal personal gain. Each piece of evidence hammered another nail into the coffin from which Chandler could no longer escape. No one defended him. No one cracked a joke. Some guests quietly slipped away, as if the truth were contagious, and those closest to it would be tainted. Chandler remained standing, but now his feet shifted restlessly. His eyes sought an exit that no longer existed. The world he'd once controlled lay exposed in its harshest light. Then Janelle moved forward. Not quickly, not slowly, just steadily enough to close the distance between them until they stood face to face, the oppressor and the one once silenced. She did not raise her voice. She did not shed a tear. She needed no expression to validate her words. The truth was fully on her side, undeniable and complete. "You don't need to apologize to me," she said, her tone gentle yet firm, each word distilled from years of endurance. "You should apologize for your father and apologize to the people you treated like garbage when all they ever wanted was to live." Her statement ended without expectation. She did not demand redemption. She did not need it. Chandler offered no reply, not because he refused, but because no words remained that could salvage the ever-growing truth around him, like an unyielding cliff. Janelle stood still a moment longer, not waiting for his reaction, but taking a final glimpse of the man who had shaped a chapter of her life, now stripped of the power he once wielded. Then she turned away, neither hurried nor glancing back. Chandler Hargrave did not leave the gala in the manner he had imagined. There was no soft music playing, no glass of red wine in hand, nor admiring glances from those who once called him friend. Instead, he walked out between 2 officers, handcuffs clicking quietly under the half-horrified, half-delighted gaze of the very crowd who had been indulged by the empire he represented. His $1,000,000 suit now felt like a glittering shell over the nakedness of a man stripped of all power. Janelle did not watch him go. She did not need to. As one door closed with the lock's harsh click around the wrist of the man who had once denied her, another opened, not only for her, but for the hundreds of people who had been ignored, belittled, and rendered invisible by the dazzling Hargrave system. Just 3 weeks later, Walter Hargrave's original will was legally validated. Janelle was declared the sole rightful heir to 50% of the Hargrave Resort Group, the largest share of Walter's estate, including the chain of 5-star hotels stretching from Miami to Aspen, the undeveloped coastal lands along the Gulf Coast, and millions of dollars worth of internal investment fund shares. She demanded no public accolades. She held no press conference. Yet every action she took afterward sent a clear message. Change does not come from words, but from rebuilding the foundation. In the first 6 months, Janelle replaced nearly the entire senior leadership, the very people who had once looked down from their attic of power. She reopened old personnel files and gave promotion opportunities to frontline managers, those who had served the system for years without ever being heard. Strategy meetings now included maintenance staff, housekeeping team leaders, and even night shift bartenders, just like her. No one was favored for their status, but everyone was respected for their humanity. Assets were no longer tools to conceal the truth. They became instruments to restore dignity. Hargrave Resort Group was restructured into a more transparent, humane model, with an employee equity program for long-tenured staff and an open financial reporting system, measures Chandler had never allowed. Entry-level salaries increased by 25%. A scholarship fund for employees' children was established in the first quarter. CNN invited her for a special interview. Under the studio's gentle lights, the host asked, "Do you feel satisfied having toppled an empire built on injustice?" Janelle smiled, soft as an early sea breeze, and replied, "I didn't topple the empire. I just returned it to the hands that deserved it." After a pause, the host continued, "And what about Chandler? Have you forgiven him?" This time, Janelle's gaze drifted as though looking back to a distant place, a small bar, one long, weary night, an envelope with $10,000, and a cruel joke. Then she turned back, both candid and gentle. "I don't forgive because they deserve it. I forgive because I deserve peace." Outside the studio that day, the sky was a perfect blue. A group of new Hargrave employees had just finished their shift at the South Beach property and chatted excitedly about tomorrow's work. They did not know that their current CEO had once been one of them, or rather, had stood below them all. And perhaps that no longer mattered, because sometimes power does not lie in a title. It lies in how you use the past to shape the present, not for revenge, but to set a new standard where dignity cannot be bought or labeled, but is restored through action. In the late afternoon lights shimmering across the sea, a woman once treated as a mere wager now stands tall as if she had never fallen. "Diva," they used to whisper behind her back. But now those very people have learned to hold their heads high and follow her every step. Not because she triumphed, but because she forgave at the right time, in the right way, and for the right person. Herself, perhaps the greatest strength Janelle displayed wasn't in exposing the truth, but in choosing not to let hatred define the rest of her life. She did not seek vengeance. She rebuilt. And from a cruel joke, she became a symbol of resurrection, for herself and for everyone once deemed lesser. This story reminds us that you don't need power to have worth. You need faith in yourself. That justice may not arrive instantly, but when it does, it is profound enough to heal wounds that once felt numb. If this story moved you, leave a comment. Have you ever been misjudged? Share this video so those who are hurting know they are not alone. And don't forget to subscribe, because many more stories like this are waiting for you. For truth can be hidden, but in the end, it always finds its way to be heard.